So we've been fighting technical difficulties here right off the bat, and who knows how long this is going to last. But if you're watching this live, good morning. And on the West Coast, something just crashed in another location somewhere. And welcome to Westdoc Online. This is live. You can tell we're live because this is like everything that could have gone wrong right at this moment has gone wrong. My name is Chuck Braverman. I am a longtime documentary filmmaker, and I was the co-founder with my business partner, Richard Proper, of the original Westdoc online conference that we did in Los Angeles for 5 years. And after we did that, we thought it would get easier every year, and it became more and more time consuming, so we stopped doing it a couple of years ago. And I became enamored with all the talented YouTube filmmakers that are on, and all the shows and the channels that they're doing. And I thought, why can't we do something like we did at Westdoc? So this is what we're trying to do, Westdoc Live. And I have a moderator here who is offline. I have people calling me from 800 numbers all over the place. And I probably have some sponsors like Media Central who are watching, saying what's going on. And I don't even know whether this is going out live because I'm looking at it and I'm not sure whether it is or not, but I do see frozen pictures there, but we'll find out. And even if it isn't, we've got this recording, so we may be watching it later. So we do have some terrific guests here today, and I can see two of them that are online right now. And let's see if the other two show up. So there's Tom Oyer from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. And Julie Goldman, who's in Brooklyn, of The Final Years and Wiener. And there's David Magdell, who's coming up twice. David, is your audio working now? So this is David Magdell, a publicist. David. And Peter has disappeared off the screen, which is who knew this is going to happen? But Peter Hamilton, who is a consultant in the TV factual world. So we'll just move on and try and figure out how to go forward without Peter.
Good. Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Oyer. I am a membership and awards manager here for the Academy of Motion Pictures. And specifically, I oversee the documentary categories as well as the other short film categories. And so dealing with both filmmakers and distributors as they qualify the films throughout the year, and then also facilitate the voting process throughout the year with the documentary branch members. And so films can qualify. I handle both doc short and doc feature categories. Films can qualify a variety of ways, which I can go into details on if you would like, or those are on our website, and I have our rules page that we have on our website. And so that's what I've done for the last many years, and we've gone through a lot of different changes in the process, and I'm happy to speak to that today.
Okay, we're going to come back to you in a minute. Let's go to Scott and of the Hollywood Reporter, Scott Feinberg, and just give us a minute or two on what you do, and then we're going to come back around and go back in detail.
Essentially, I coordinate our awards coverage. That is now a year-round thing. It started out just purely Oscar-centric, and then we realized that September through February is essentially Oscar season, but then March through June is basically Tonys, and June through September is Emmys. And so there's stuff year-round that is of interest to people in these various segments of the entertainment industry that have a stake or a rooting interest in one way or another. And so we try to track it like a presidential campaign, sort of like an embedded reporter who's there from the declarations of the candidacies, in this case film festival unveilings or whatever, through the primaries and caucuses, all these different other awards and things that lead up to and sort of shape the actual award that the season's named after. And a podcast now, another way to get to know the contenders. So just basically taking your average Joe who might not know how this all comes together behind the scenes, so that they can understand that it's not just people getting a ballot at the end of the year. There's a whole season involved.
Okay, great. Julie, you want to tell us about just a little bit about your background, and we're going to circle back around, but about how did you get to where you are today a little bit, and if you want to talk about the final year a bit.
Sure. Sure. So I'm a producer and executive producer of documentary features. I have a company called Motto Pictures. We're based in Brooklyn, New York, and in the last years we've produced films like Wiener, Life Animated, Music of Strangers, Best of Enemies. This year we have The Final Year and Abacus.
Okay, you want to tell us about what you do, David?
Hey, sorry about the technical difficulties. I am a publicist working mostly in documentaries, and I've been doing this since 1999 and got started with doing a short documentary. And it's been an interesting ride, I think, with documentary films doing so well and finding brand new audiences. It's really important that publicists and public relations really play a big part in getting the films out.
Okay, great. I don't know what happened to Julie, but we seem to have lost Julie. Let's go back to Tom. And do you want to tell us a little bit about the process of how we got to where we are today with 170 feature film docs submitted and I don't know how many shorts, 70, 75 shorts?
Mm-hmm. You want me to just speak to how the process works now, or how the film's all qualified. I mean, we've had an explosion in documentaries in the last few years. And, for the feature category, it's a New York and LA release, 7-day run in both cities. We have a certain number of screening times and advertising and review requirements. As far as with the doc short category, that's grown in a way where we've incorporated qualifying festivals from around the world, and doc shorts that win a juried doc short award at certain festivals that are on our qualifying list can then be automatically eligible to qualify for the doc short category. So those are some changes that we've had over the last few years. We've had growth in both categories, but especially in feature, obviously, that the number of documentary features that are qualifying has continued to grow, and I think the huge growth in documentaries over the last 5 to 10 years, and it's become an evolving process.
How do Academy members watch 170 doc features and how many shorts? 70 or 75 shorts in a 3 or 4 month period of time?
Well, and that's the one thing where we try to start the process as early as possible, and I think that's something that some filmmakers are not necessarily aware of. I think a lot of people will do a qualifying run in the fall to make their film eligible, but I think they need to realize that it's a year-round process, that films that qualify in the spring and summer, we provide to members starting in June. I like to get it earlier, but usually around June, and then from June monthly throughout the summer and the fall, members are being provided films and viewing films throughout the year, and I think that's the key thing to keep in mind, that it doesn't mean that you necessarily need to wait until October or November to do your qualifying run. Honestly, what works best for your film to reach its audience should be the primary goal. And then from there, if you do a spring or summer release, then the members have more time to view your films. And I think everybody would like to have more the films available earlier for more members to see throughout the year.
But you still didn't explain about how it works with when you have 170 films.
Okay. So we do a process where members are assigned required viewing, and then that way there's a minimal number of films that each member is at least viewing in addition to anything else, and then also it guarantees a certain minimum number of branch members that are viewing every film, and that is the process that we do to ensure that there is at least eyes on all the different films throughout the process. But as we say, some members are encouraged to view and consider any of the eligible films as well. So it's a process where we definitely try to spread that out across the branch.
And today happens to be a special day, doesn't it?
Well, we're hoping to have the documentary short category, to have that short list out today. I don't have that yet. I'm sorry, but I'm hoping that we can get that out later today, if not tomorrow, and then we'll have the doc feature short list of 15 films later this week, hopefully on Thursday.
How many doc shorts will there be announced?
There'll be 10. A short list of 10 doc shorts will be announced. Yeah.
And then after there are 10,
Yes.
then you vote for which ones you want to be nominated. What is the process after the 10 come out?
Right. So just to clarify that it's members of the documentary branch that are voting in this round. It's not all Academy members. So it is the members that are, the Academy is divided into different branches, and specifically members who are directors, producers, editors, cinematographers in the documentary field are the ones voting on these shortlists in both categories. We'll have a short list of 10 for doc short, short list of 15 for doc feature, and then we will do another round of voting in January where the same documentary branch members will then vote to determine the 5 nominees in both categories. And then once we have the 5 nominees is when it's then open up to the entire Academy membership to vote to determine the winner in both categories.
And there's Julia's Backlund. Will you tell us what your process is, David, during this period of time and as the voting goes on?
Yeah, during this period of time, it's really up to us to really kind of get the film out there.
Put the phone up to your mouth. Hold the phone up closer to your mouth, please.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
So during this period of time, it's up to us to really get the films out there through screening opportunities, staying in touch with the voters as much as we can, getting any press that we can get. Also working together with, Tom and them over at AMPAS to making sure that, all of the filmmakers have all of their paperwork and all everything that they need to qualify that actually is there at the Academy. But during this period of time, it's all about getting that film out there, whether it's we doing screening events or putting it back in theaters or playing it in festivals, anywhere that we can have the film in front of audiences, and so that then the voters can actually have opportunity to see the film. It's about accessibility, awareness, and availability for the films.
Julie, what are you doing in terms of your film this year? In terms of promoting it, in terms of the Oscar campaign, and how important is that to you, and what are you doing?
It's important to get the film out there for people to see in general, and if the film gets a shortlisted nomination, obviously an Oscar, then it gets to more people. So you really want to, if you want to get to a wide audience, you have to be willing to compete and be willing to get your film in front of voters, essentially. So I think as Tom said, though, it was freezing, for the shortlist and nomination, it's specifically for the documentary branch. So that target audience is, you just try to reach them as much as possible. We're working with David on Abacus, and we've had a lot of screenings, and we've gone to a lot of events, and we kind of split up for that in some ways, so that if Steve James, the director, who is very busy working on a series, which has not made it easy in this case, if Steve can't come to some of the events, then Mark Mitten, who's a producer, would come, or I would come. Mark is the primary producer. I produced it in New York, and then also the family from the film might come. I mean, we went to the Critics' Choice Awards, where we were very happy to win.
So the film you're talking about is Abacus.
The subjects were there, yes, in Abacus.
Abacus Too Small to Jail, which, by the way, is a fantastic film. I've watched it. I thought it was certainly one of the better films. But you also have another film this year, also,
yes.
Don't you?
Yeah. So then we have the final year, and now Abacus came out, which is interesting if you think about it. Abacus premiered at TIFF 2016. Mm-hmm. And then the final year premiered at TIFF, Toronto Film Festival, 2017. So it is very different in terms of the ability for it to get in front of a lot of people. We had to really move quickly because nobody had seen the final year before September of this year. So that meant it was like a very, very kind of concentrated movement to get the film out, to have as many screenings as we could have. And you have to stay within a lot of the rules as well of the Academy, which you have to be quite aware of. And David could probably write a book and Tom could write the foreword. So but so we have to, you work with a publicist, you work with your distributor, ideally, if you have a distributor that you're working with, and you kind of build a team to try to come up with the best strategy and ability to get out there in a big way. And then you actually work the campaign circuit. That's what's kind of become interesting about the documentary world. The last time Greg Barker had a film that was shortlisted, it was Sergio, which was 2009, 2010, which we did together. And he didn't do anything. It was shortlisted, and let's see what happens. It has changed so significantly in that period. It's very interesting.
Well, so that begs the question, really, to everybody, and I'll ask you, Julie, first, and that is, as an Academy member myself, I get, and you probably know, I bet I get 20 invitations every couple of days to screenings, and the fact that I'm getting invitations to screenings, it's great to see films in a big theater and all that, except, as you know, this year for the first time we have access to all the films online in a private, private screening online where we can easily look at all the films. How important do you think is the screening process and the press process when all the voting members of the branch can sit at home and watch it on their computer or on the big screen through AirPlay and all that?
I think you still really want, especially with a film like The Final Year, where it's a very good audience film, especially now more than ever, isn't that what we say every day? With President Trump, and it's I think it's very significant.
You should explain a little bit about what The Final Year is.
The Final Year is about the last year of diplomacy under the Obama administration, with President Obama, John Kerry, Samantha Power, Ben Rhodes, and Susan Rice. And so it's very immersive in that year. We traveled to 21 countries. It was a very kind of crazy intensive shoot. And while we were filming it, of course, we didn't know what the outcome of the election would be. And there's a very depressing election night sequence, which people feel like PTSD sometimes when they're watching. But it kind of comes around and has almost what I would say some hope, at the end with President Obama. But now people are really, it's almost a cathartic experience to watch this together in a group. And that's the response that we're getting when people are coming to screenings. So we very much want people to see it that way, as opposed to, at home on your computer. I'm in the documentary branch too. It is distracting. You're easily distracted if you're at work or you're at home trying to watch a film, because there's the rest of your life there. So, while you try to give it the utmost attention, it's just never the same as if you're in a screening.
Scott, how many documentary films have you watched this year?
I don't have an exact figure for you, but I try to see as many as I can. I love doing it. I serve on the documentary jury at the Boulder International Film Festival right after the Oscars each year, because they know that I love documentaries, and it's helpful for me to catch up on all of the docs that I wasn't able to see at Sundance, because that's right around the time of nomination. So I have to be in LA dealing with that, so I don't go to Sundance. And then throughout the year, I just see as many as I can. There is now some overlap with Emmys eligibility, so during that time of year I try to see some. And then by the time we get to the fall, I really pound out as many as I can, because we end up now, for the last 5 years, have had this panel that Greg Barker was one of the participants in this year, and Steve James in a past year, at the Savannah Film Festival, where we highlight 10 top documentaries to try to not say that these are the ones that are necessarily worthy of votes or whatever, but it's the same reason that there's a doc message board for the Academy members who are in the doc branch. It's the same reason, I think, why David and Julie and people who are working on movies do these screenings and events. Is there a way to, when there are 170 eligible titles, you have to find some way to make your movie stand out from the pack. There's nobody that's actually, with the exception of one guy, Ken Rudolph, I think, actually watching all 170. And so the challenge is to make yours exciting. I think that's the reason why I'm sure Julie's had, Samantha Power and folks at Q&As of their movies, of the final year. It's the reason why a New York Film Festival premiere for Abacus, for instance, was important. It just adds to the prestige. It separates it from the pack. And so I guess it's a long answer to a short question.
Which films have jumped out because of what reason out of the 170 films, in your opinion, in a short answer?
Well, I mean, I don't know that any of these precursor awards, like the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards or anything like that, really, the IDA Awards, the Cinema Eye Honors, I don't know how much any of them actually reflect the tastes of the doc branch of the Academy. But what they do, I think, is, again, emphasize to those people which movies they really should make it a priority to see. So I think as a result, everybody's seeing Jane, for instance, is a high-profile contender this year. It didn't hurt that they had a world premiere at the Hollywood Bowl, first time a documentary's ever had that, or that they've had Jane Goodall going around with them. So that's been a one that stood out. I think Netflix certainly has a built-in advantage, along with Amazon to an extent, where you don't even have to have a screener sent or a screening. Everybody gets Netflix. So if you're Icarus or one of these others, you're available immediately in all but 3 countries around the world. So there are various advantages for or legs up for various films. But I don't know if you're asking which are the front runners right now, or just which ones have gotten the most spotlight.
Well, I wanted to know if something jumped out on that, but it leads me to a Tom question for a moment. And I don't really want to open up a can of worms here, but how Netflix and Amazon, and the new big OTT channels, how are they affecting the documentary race as far as you're concerned? And
I can't really comment on that, Chuck. I mean, I think that obviously there's lots of different campaigning and screenings and different things that people do, and look, there's people can make the decisions what's best for their film to reach the documentary community. I think the key thing here is that the documentary branch is very geodiverse. It is not necessarily just LA and New York based. There are Doc Branch members all over the country. There's Doc Branch members that live around the world. So, for a lot of them, yes, there might be screenings in LA and New York, but that doesn't mean that the other branch members who don't live in those cities, that they aren't able to attend those things. So, that's why we do the process that we do with making all the films available through our streaming platform. And we want to ensure that members have access to view as many of the documentaries that they would like to view. And for the record, I know other Doc Branch members that watch all of them as well. There are definitely a lot of people that are very dedicated. And then, like I said, we start in June. They watch throughout the year. I think some people, they like to go to the events, see things on the screen. But there are other people that prefer to just view films and make their decisions that way. As far as the distributors and different companies that are qualifying documentaries, that's up to individual voters to decide on that regard. But people, they're still qualifying their films in the same way and doing their qualifying runs, and then, and then the voters ultimately make their own individual choices, which is why, what I like about the process. So,
David, by my count, you probably win the Publicist Award this year for representing more documentary films.
No, I have about eight on the list right now, and we're just trying to push those through. I think at the end of the day, it's the film that has to resonate with that voter. But again, it's like you're saying, how do we get the film out to that voter? But it's not how many parties they go to, how many events that they show up to. It's really if they get a chance to watch your film. That's most important, whether they're watching it on a link, a DVD, at a screening, at a festival, is really important. When we try to turn it up a little bit on the press side, if we can make Scott's like list of what he feels is going to be like the top ones that we should be looking for. It really helps a little bit and then when these IDA awards, Cinema Eye, Critics' Choice, what that does, it allows that film to kind of lift itself up a little bit so that the voter, if they hear about that, it'll be that whiplash appeal like, oh, shoot, I need to see that movie, and it's in my tray that I have to make sure I take a look at it in the portal. So as a publicist, we look for those opportunities to just really lift the film up as much as possible. This year, what's really interesting is the short documentaries have all turned it up even more so. I don't know if it's because of Netflix or who, but a lot of people are getting their shorts out. I've worked in short. That's how I first got started in 1999, was on short documentary. And it was just one of these things where no one would do a campaign behind it. They would wait until it made, not even the short list. A lot of times they used to wait until they get to the nomination, then it moved. They waited until they got to the short list. Now people are coming out and doing campaigns prior to the short list to get it seen. And so, again, to lift it up. And with 77 docs that you're up against, short docs, and you haven't had maybe the luxury of being at a Sundance or a Tribeca or someplace where, or Full Frame, where this audience would have seen it, then you really got to, do something to raise your film up a little bit more. And so that's press and screenings, getting the screener out there and just making sure everyone sees that this documentary and this film is very important. Another thing, too, you have to take a look at how they vote on these things, too, because this is just my own opinion. I just see when you see these short lists come out and you see, like, what does come out, it feels like a lot of them will vote on what they're feeling. What has that film really done for them right at that moment? And you can see how it rides. So, like, for a while, if you guys remember back in April when Ketty came out, everybody's like, oh, my God, Ketty, da-da-da, because there was nothing else that anybody else was seeing. But Ketty came out, and it really made people feel good. Then you look at, as things start to flow around to, like, now, and I look at what Julie's done with The Final Year, and then we look at Abacus, right? So Abacus was 2016. But it's had a life and it's gone through. And then Final Year comes out in 2017, same film festival. But the cool thing, it's a discovery. And so everybody's like, oh, I've seen all the other, 90 that I've seen already. But boom, wait, Greg Barker, Tiff, Julie's on it. And all these things really make a difference. Who is the personnel on these films? What has that filmmaker done? What has that film done for that voter that's going to make them put that in their number 1 through 10 slot? I think that's what's really important. The film really, at the end of the day, is the most important thing.
What if a young filmmaker comes to you and isn't Julie with a bunch of awards and a lot of experience, or
I like that I'm in that young parallel that you just made. It feels good.
What does it cost a filmmaker to, after they've maxed out their credit cards, they probably come to you last because now they've got the film, they've just finished it, and they're trying to qualify it. What do you tell them? What do they have to spend to become eligible and to get it out there?
It's not cheap, huh, Julie?
It's not cheap.
And also I think they have to take a look at whether or not they really want to go for the ride and if they feel that this film can actually go to the distance. And I think that's something that as both, and Julia and I have been on the same team where we've had to talk people into whether they should do it or not do it. Ultimately, it's the filmmaker's decision. But I think, they have to weigh things because it's not worth betting your house on or giving up your mortgage payment on. It's an opportunity,
Especially
but
now.
if you can pull it together. Yeah.
So Tom, I can't remember whether you said this at the beginning, but I know in the shorts you can qualify a film this year and maybe in the last year or two by winning specific film festivals. Is that
Right?
Right. And so there's like a half a dozen festivals. If your short doc wins in that category, does the same thing exist in the feature doc category or no?
It does not currently. Right now, any feature category at the Academy requires theatrical, and that has been what's in the rules over the last number of years. So that is currently the process. So that's where it becomes a cost-prohibitive issue with certain films in the feature category because you have to do a New York and Los Angeles release, 4 screening times a day, advertising, review. I mean, there's a certain level of investment that it's going to require, and I think that's something that we want we certainly want filmmakers to have all the information so they can make the best decision for them. And what I always reiterate to people is that, you know, when I talk to people and explain the process, you know, they have to decide what's best for their film to reach their target audience and the exposure that they want their film to make. And the reality is that if theatrical is part of that naturally and how they want to reach an audience, then great, this is how you qualify. But I feel like, you know, there's definitely filmmakers that have, you know, are locking their picture last minute, scrambling, trying to submit by the deadline. And I don't understand that, because I feel like if you're just finishing your picture, you should then be, you know, submitting to film festivals and seeing the exposure of the film and seeing if it could eventually get distribution in some way. And I feel like every fall I see a lot of films last minute booking theaters, trying to submit, last minute to qualify. And the one thing I want to reiterate is when you have a locked picture, you have 2 years to qualify. So you have plenty of time. There is no need to rush by the September deadline. But it seems like every year we see this again and again. And that's why I want to reiterate that we have the voting process year-round. Members are watching films year-round, starting in the early summer. And so, you know, I always try to encourage people to really think about what's best for their film to reach an audience. Number one.
I want to go to Scott in a second, but before I do that, I want to thank the sponsors for making this possible. LumaForge, which is a terrific server for computer company. Pond5, which has 60 million videos and audios and everything else that's available. And Media Central, Jay at Media Central, who I've used for years. And they've been around, I think, since 1993. If you need a freelance cameraman, call up Jay at Media Central anywhere in the world. And they're a terrific company. They know the best. Scott, how does a independent filmmaker get any press at the Hollywood Reporter if they've just finished their doc short or their feature film? What do they do if they can't afford to hire David or some other publicist?
You know, I think you have the cream generally, and there are exceptions, generally rises to the top. So if you're that, I think there's a stat that was provided by the IDA or somebody in the last few years where almost every film that's been shortlisted for the Best Documentary Feature Oscar over the last few years either premiered at Sundance, Tribeca, Telluride, Toronto, or one other major, I'm blanking, and or was distributed by Netflix or HBO, and or like one or two other things. Now, you could argue that both ways. You could say that because you're distributed by HBO or Netflix, people check you out more than they would if you were just another one in the pile. But the point is that we, like the Doc Branch members, cannot see everything. So the way that we are guided is by what is accepted to the major film festivals, what is distributed by the major distributors. And, you know, it's not fair because I know that there are a few movies that I've come across over the last few years that did not meet any of those criteria that I mentioned and deserved, in my opinion, as much as those that did, to be shortlisted or to be nominated. But, you know, it's an impossible task when you're giving somebody 170 jobs. Anyone who is still, you know, employed, like most people in the Doc Branch, anyone who, you know, has even just a family to deal with or anything, there's no way you're watching 170. So that is why it is so important to have your, you know, any of these things that happen along the way that can raise the profile of your movie, increase the likelihood that your movie will be one of the 20 that somebody takes the time to check out.
Well, here's an unfair question now, Scott. You want to make any predictions in the feature world of 2 or 3?
I think that I would be very surprised if Jane and Risk and Icarus and City of Ghosts, like there's certain ones, and including the final year, that have been showing up at every one of these steps along the way. Now, again, as I said, the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards, which was actually an idea that I suggested to them and now has happen. I think it's important because it's a way to highlight great documentaries, but I'm not going to argue that because the Critics' Choice Documentary Awards nominated something, it's then suddenly more likely to get an Oscar nomination. But I think the cumulative effect, when you're seeing the same titles show up with Critics' Choice, Cinema Eye Honors, IDA, by the time you get to the shortlist, there's been 4 or 5 of these things. There are a number of them that have shown up with every group, and I think that those are the ones that you have to assume are also then getting on the radar of folks like you guys in the branch.
I think there's only 1 or 2 of the shorts actually who are nominated by the IDA this year that are also, I mean, Heaven is a Traffic Jam on the 405, which is a terrific short, is a nominee of IDA, and I don't know if any of the others are nominees or not.
Well, I'll just tell you with the shorts, the reality is that, and this is, I don't argue that it's fair to shorts, but we can barely see a large segment of the features that we have to see. So my personal policy with shorts, it's no disrespect to any of the filmmakers, but I don't even know where to begin with shorts. So what I say is that I will wait until the Academy's short list of the shorts comes out, and then we start to look at coverage possibilities. But for me personally, it's just overwhelming the amount of content that's out there. And so rather than, seeming to be playing favorites because of who a filmmaker is or if it's a Netflix short or whatever, I don't want to get involved until there is a short list when it comes to the shorts.
I think you're right, Scott. I find that with other press people, they won't cover a short as much as they would a feature, and they will wait till the short list comes out. And so I think that's one of the challenges that we have when we start to work on a short, is explaining that to the filmmaker that press on your short is really going to be difficult within that whole filmmaker world. And one of the challenges, and I think strategies that we try to employ, again, is to get the film out there, find that core audience that's going to support that short documentary, whether it's through the issue or through the filmmaker, so that way it can lift it up so it comes from the ground up versus from the top down. Especially if you have a film that's never gone to Sundance or any of these larger film festivals or one, let's say, Palm Springs Shorts, or anything in the doc. For me, Full Frame is always a good place for a short doc to go to. Hot Docs is a good place for short docs to go to. Sometimes, Sundance is, but I think most of the people are more focused on the features. But on the short side, maybe the LA Film Festival is another good place to keep it on people's radar screens. But I think, with the press side of things, explaining that to a filmmaker that you're not getting press coverage is always difficult, but it's walking them through those paces. I had a film that they were screaming at me, going, "You have to get press, you have to get press." And I said, "No, it's not going to happen, but why don't we build it from the bottom up? Let's do screenings, let's say at the Monica every Saturday and Sunday at 11 o'clock in the morning. Let's build your audiences in, so then those audiences will take that film and lift it up, and then someone's going to notice, wait a minute, they've had 1,200 people come to see this film, in a matter of 4 weeks."
So I got to tell you, as a branch member myself, and being required to watch 15% of both the features and the shorts, I've watched a lot of the shorts this year, and I'm looking at my list, and I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I see 10, 11 films that are just outstanding in the short area, that are innovative, that are different, that are surprising. And the stakes are smaller, and so filmmakers, they can go out there with a crew of 2 people and then shoot it in, maybe 2 days or 2 years or whatever the film is. I mean, there's one German film here that's called 10 Meter Tower, which is, I don't know the filmmaker, I don't know how it happened, but it's so different. Well, Swedish, whatever it is. It was just one that jumped out as being so gutsy to do this film, and it was different, and I hope it makes the short list. Tom, what is your guess? Has anybody slipped any paper on your desk yet this morning and said, "Here it is"? How do you actually release? You send out an email to the press all at the same time, or should we call you back? Should we reschedule at 4 o'clock this afternoon, or what should we do?
We will issue a press release with the 10 titles when we have that ready to go, and then that's how we announce it.
Julie, what?
Wait, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Do you go in alphabetical order when you write to the filmmakers?
Yes.
Okay.
But you don't actually.
I remember
you
last
don't.
year with the shortlist, we knew about Life Animated and we hadn't heard about Wiener, and
Right.
we were going nuts.
Right.
And I was like, this better
Right.
be in alphabetical order.
Right. It was alphabetical. That's why.
Yeah,
don't worry.
Don't you? But you're not notifying the filmmakers before you're
I
notifying.
do. At the same time,
But like right before, yeah.
like within the hour.
Oh, so like
I send them an email within the hour before the press release goes out. I'm sending them an email notifying them individually, and then the press release.
And you do that for the shorts also
Mhm.
today? Does that
Oh,
go
yeah.
out? Does that one email with a list of 10 names, or is it 10 emails that go out at the same time?
I email them individually, notifying them that they are on the short list.
How great. Julie, you want
It's
to tell
my
us,
favorite part of my job. Just for the record.
what about the other 60? Do you get like 60 telephone calls and say what happened to my film and why didn't I make the short list?
I also will send an email to everyone that's submitted, letting them know that here's the short list. I don't have time to call people, so I do emails, but that's fine.
Julie, your credit list is really impressive and mind-blowing, and the fact that you just mentioned, Life Animated, Abacus, and Final Year. These are just the last three that are up at the top of the most recent stack. But where did you come from, and how did you get to be in this position where you are involved in so many terrific films?
Well, I worked between being, producing, and I did distribution and sales for about 5 years when I started, which was, I think, incredibly helpful, actually. And then I produced everything from, music videos to commercials to fiction, and went back to documentaries, which is what I had worked for in distribution and worked on in distribution, and have been doing that for a long time now, very long, it feels. And we started Motto in 2009 after I'd had another company for 7 years. So I think, the relationships that have been built in that time have really accounted for being able to get involved in terrific projects with terrific filmmakers. Luck.
Well, I want to congratulate you because, two of my favorite films this year are Abacus and The Final Year, and I actually,
hearing that.
well, it's
Tom,
true.
I'm hoping
And
to get good letters.
the Final Year, honestly, I wasn't really looking forward to watching it because I thought it would be depressing for me, and I felt like I had seen everything that there was to see about the Obama administration, and despite what's going on, I just really didn't want to look back. And like 5 minutes into the film, I was completely hooked, and the access that you had inside the White House and inside the limousines with all these people, and not necessarily with the president, with the characters you had, was really terrific. And
Yeah, it took a long time to get that access, but I love hearing that. And I think there is a feeling when you're watching it now of kind of escape from today in a in a way that we all need. So it does feel like you're in this time where people care so much about making change, and we're just in a very different time now.
Does anybody here,
Super diplomatic.
anybody online here have any questions that they want to ask anybody else before we sign off? Especially maybe Tom, any questions beside the short list today, or is there anything else that anybody wants to say? Scott, when is your story coming out? Will you be in the paper tomorrow with the list?
About the short list, we'll have our breaking news team puts it up as soon as we get it from Tom, and then we'll see. Like yesterday, the takeaway, in a way, was that Kobe Bryant's animated short was shortlisted, so that was interesting. But it's still, most of our readers are interested in fun facts like that about the short list. But we first always come out with the list itself.
And what is the website? Is it HollywoodReporter.com?
THR.com, and then if they want to get the award specific stuff, it's THR.com/the race, and our podcast is Awards Chatter.
And David, do you want to tell us how filmmakers from around the world can get in touch with you if you have time to handle them with all the films that you've got?
It's pretty accessible. I'm on Facebook a lot. And also David Magno Associates is on Facebook. We're going to be launching our new website in a couple of weeks so that they can access us. I have the blessing of working together with people like Julie and working back together with, other producers and things, with people like that. And documentaries has been my passion for like the longest time. And so I have a job that I love, and so it doesn't feel like work. And sometimes I just have to stop and have like a live. And so I feel real blessed to be working in this genre. And just, when I listen to new filmmakers and what they want to do with awards things, I think the best thing is they just have to make the best possible movie that they really feel in their heart, because that's what's going to end up on screen. And I've noticed this year on the features and even on the shorts, people have turned it up in terms of technology that they're using, whether they're using sound, animation, or the way they're editing their films together. So it's no longer just the interview and then cut away to a scene and then a question and answer, but people are looking at cinematic effects and values to tell that story. And I think that's the other thing too, that people, if they're going to really make that film, make it the best possible so you can tell that story.
Well, I think you make a really good point in the documentary world, and that is, I think the documentary category and filmmaker is the tail that's wagging the dog here, because I think the films that are coming out of the documentary branch are, I was, by expression, I was going to say every bit as good, but they're way better than the average film, I think, that is playing in the cinema today. All the tent poles and franchise films are not terribly original and very predictable. And even when you look at a film like The Final Year, how embarrassing it must be for the network news departments when they look at this film, because The Final Year is as good a current affairs type documentary has ever been made, and Julie and her team got access that nobody else got anywhere, and the making of the film is so terrific.
Greg is a fantastic filmmaker and really talented, and wanted to do the War Room backwards in a way, which is pretty cool. And Steve James is obviously an incredibly talented filmmaker. So
right. Well, and
again, lucky to work with people like that, and that's part of the joy of documentary, is you get to team up with people who you
that's
admire.
the good news. The good news. The bad news is there's 170 films to choose from, and only how many, Tom, is going to be 10 or 12? How many shortlisted on the feature? How do they decide how many are shortlisted?
There's 15. 15
they will be.
15 films on the short list for doc feature.
And then that list will be narrowed down to 5 nominees. Is that right?
Correct. Also by the documentary branch.
Out of 170. I mean, I'm looking at my list of 170 films right now, and there's certainly more than 15 that are worthy.
It's a stellar year of documentaries. Every year it seems to be like another strong, amazing year with so many great films. I mean, I'm glad that there are a lot of great documentaries as opposed to the opposite. So I'm glad that it's there's such an amazing growth and field of films. I think the number 170 is a lot, and it is intimidating. The Best Picture reminder list is over 300 titles. I just want to give some context here that there's a lot of films being made, and that's the reality of it. And what our process is that we make sure that all the members have access to all the films. And we don't necessarily do that in other categories. I think for documentary, it's like we make sure that anything that's qualified is available to members to view. And, members are seeing films at festivals, at screenings, at theaters around the year. So, it's not necessarily like it's here, September, here, see all these movies. The idea is that members are always seeing members of the documentary community, they're seeing documentaries year round. And this is a way to just ensuring that they have access to everything that's already been, throughout the year. So and then everyone has to make their tough choices with their vote, and it's not easy. And there's amazing films, and there will be amazing ones that get shortlisted and amazing ones that don't. And it's a tough process.
Also, if I might add, for any filmmakers that are watching this streaming cast, if you're going to be thinking about making an awards run, think about doing it on the earlier side so you can get all your dates locked in and get all your screenings locked in. Some films we started early, like in May and June. There are some that we started 4 weeks ago, and that's scary. Yeah. Because you're not going to get the same attention that these other ones that have been on that search have been for a while. especially if you've had a film that have started in January at Sundance. I'm sorry, it's really early, but this is the time I start looking at, okay, what's going to look at that trajectory for the rest of the year? What do I need to plan in terms of strategy for leading up to this time next year? And, you'll know. So just think about those things early on, and you'll be in a better place than if you come to me 4 weeks ago, because then we're scrambling.
I won't
That's
ask.
why we're so lucky to work with you, David, because you really do think about
I
it.
won't ask who came to you 4 weeks ago. Thank you all for
Yeah.
thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this. I really appreciate this, and I think it's because all of us here on this online streamcast are passionate about documentaries, and we care about these films. And I think it is a golden age of documentaries. I think the films that are here, these 110 films and the 15 finalists and the shorts and features are just wonderful, fabulous films, and it's a good time for docs. So thanks very much. I appreciate your time, and we'll see you online. Thanks to our sponsors.
Thanks, Chuck.
Okay, so long.
Thanks, Chuck.
Bye-bye.